Coalition. This is our second scheduled meeting. I want to thank each of you for being here. And we're going to be a little under-attended today because there are several of our sector representatives and partners that had other commitments. As a matter of fact, our school student representative is in Johnson City in a rural high school medical camp. We have a couple of our school representatives that are in Cookeville for leadership training. Unfortunately, Mr. Brian Gill at the Stones River Hospital is resigning his position, and he's assured me that he was going to appoint someone that would step in and take his place on the coalition, because this is something he really believes in. As we all do. The library starts their reading program this morning, and so that representative is not going to be here. But anyway, as you can see, all these people that are doing other things are doing the same thing we are, working to help our community, and that's what we want to do. Another unfortunate event was Ms. Norma Knox, one of our board members. Her mother is in ICU and not doing very well. But anyway, we'd like to welcome everyone here. And I'd like to start out introducing ourselves. And I'm going to start out with the lady to my right here.
Good morning. It is, yes, it's still morning. It's not afternoon until after I eat lunch. My name is Sadie Swaney. I work for the Army National Guard. And right now, my mission, I'm really lucky, I have an at-home mission, and my mission is to help counties across the state develop a coalition that's focused on the prevention of drugs, alcohol, substance abuse. Whatever your community deems is a harmful substance, and if there are people who might be abusing it or misusing it, that's what we're looking to build, is a group of people working together to prevent those problems. So similar to any type of community group or community initiative, that's just like this coalition. Our focus is prevention of substance abuse and misuse. And my name is Sadie. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
I'm Lynette Thomas. I'll attend Celebrate Recovery, and Glenn, I need something to do.
All right, okay. Good. Well, I think we could probably put you to work on several different projects.
All right.
Thank you for being here.
I'm Judy Schoen. I'm a trustee at the library.
Good. Appreciate you being here.
Jim Bush, 3rd District Commissioner, County Council.
Appreciate you being here. Ms. Jenny?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jen Talbert. I'm with Mirror Lake Recovery Center, and I'm so excited that you guys got this started. And I'm always here to support in any way that I can.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
I'm Travis Maddox. I'm with the Woodbury Lions Club.
And you're a sector representative of the Lions Club.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm Keith Reddy, play newspaper reporter for the Cannon Courier.
Good. Thank you.
I'm Cassell Davis, and I'm the coordinator for the Cannon County Child Advocacy Center.
It's good to see you again.
It's nice to see you too. Thank you.
I'm Michael Rinaldi. I'm director of the health department here, and one of our big 4 focuses is substance abuse prevention, and so I'm really happy that this group has taken off, and Glenn have done a great job in starting this program, and just want to help any way we possibly can.
You already have, and we appreciate that very much.
I'm Pam Steakley, and I'm the facilitator for the coalition.
And I'm Glenn Steakley, the current director for the coalition. Next on the agenda, the approval of the May 9th minutes, and everyone should have gotten a copy of the minutes through email. So do I hear a motion to pass the amendments? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next on the agenda, we're going to turn the program over to Lieutenant Swaney. and she's going to talk to us about strategic prevention framework. Now, this is something, I haven't seen this, but this is something.
Don't talk it up too much.
I haven't seen it, but I can tell you that what a coalition does is work from the community level and to identify the problems. We all think we know what problems are, and we do. But what this will do is focus on a community level. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
No, go for it.
Community level problem solving. Lieutenant Swain.
And I'm going to give a presentation on biscuits and gravy. Wouldn't that be something? Glenn basically hit the nail on the head. Come around and take the cap off of this. So I have a team of guys who work with me in Smyrna, and we work with counties across the state to get their coalition up off the ground. And what that looks a little different for each county. Sometimes getting it up off the ground just means that we're gaining interest in members. Sometimes that means we're helping write a grant for funding. Sometimes that means connecting them with other resources in their community that they could be making better use of. And sometimes it looks like just explaining how we're going to do it. So, let me hit these lights. One or two, you think? Turn the lights all the way out. All right, so a couple things about me. My presentation style is pretty loose. I don't like to read from the slide. I think that's boring. Sat through a lot of PowerPoints and hated every second of it. So I'm going to explain this to you in a way that, for lack of a better term, like in the way that I would explain to my parents or family members who have no idea what a coalition is, why prevention is important, or how we would do it. So if at any point I'm moving too fast or something on the slide doesn't match what I'm saying and you need clarification, just call out. It's a small enough room that you can just shout out a question and I'll catch the echo and let you know that I can hear, okay? Everyone, I think most of us have a handout. It's nothing super fancy. It's just this PowerPoint on paper in case it's difficult to see. It might be a little hazy for you. You're welcome to take notes on it. Make a paper plane out of it, draw an illustration, write a poem. You can do whatever you want with it. I just wanted you to have that resource if you have questions or you can't see or you just need something to do and something to write on. So the Strategic Prevention Framework is a model for change. It is evidence-based. Lots of much richer, more intelligent people than me came up with this theory for change. There are all kinds of theories for change, whether you want to affect obesity in your state or whether you want to teach your dog to stop using the restroom in the house. There is a theory for change for everything. So this theory for change is specifically for making community level change. And it has been kind of morphed into a prevention focus. So part of the reason why we want to stay so prevention focused is, and I don't live in Cannon County, I live in Montgomery County. So I don't know exactly what's going on in your county, but let's pretend that your county has no alcohol, drugs, or substance abuse or misuse problems whatsoever. I don't necessarily think that's true because I can watch the news like you all, but let's pretend we live in a perfect county, there's no problems. But every county around Cannon County has problems. Rather than go try to fix those other counties, we're going to work right here in-house to create prevention strategies to help people before they have already kind of jumped off the deep end and we don't know what to do. Here's an example. Grundy County lately has had an influx in death by overdose, opiate overdose, or heroin overdose. Now, rather than going into Grundy County and saying, I'm Sadie and I'm going to help all of you, I'm going to put you all in recovery, I can do this, me and these other 20 people in the room that probably have full-time jobs are going to put on our capes, we're gonna make sure nobody overdoses ever again in Grundy County. Does that sound reasonable? The answer is no. We can't. A group of people cannot go door to door asking, like, have you done drugs today? Do you want to come to my house? It's unreasonable. But what we can do is try to get to the head of it and work on prevention. And that looks like trying to change some social norms, access to resources, and overall competency of what could be going on in your community. So we'll start with, this is what the model looks like in color. This is that catchy thing they put on the front to kind of get you in there. It works on kind of a continuum. So we have the 5 blocks: assessment, capacity, planning, implementation, evaluation. And in the center we have sustainability and cultural competence. It's not necessarily a 5-step plan. I wish it were that easy. But we realize that not everything can go in sequential order, especially when we're talking about substance abuse. So, assessment, capacity, planning, implementation, evaluation. Those are all the 5 things that we want to be considering as we grow and develop the coalition. With the end goal and the holy mecca being that our community and this coalition is sustainable, meaning if Pam and Glenn decide tomorrow morning that they're going to move to Key West and never talk to anyone here again, please don't do that. If they do decide that, can this coalition sustain? Right now, probably not. After a few more meetings, probably so. We never want you to leave. But the purpose is, by having a theory and a model, we can get the gears turning where people can step away and step back in, and we're still working like a well-oiled machine. We're still affecting positive change in the community. The second thing, our second goal is cultural competence. That means that we don't need everyone to be a scientist on heroin. What we do need is for every person who is able to understand the risks and dangers of drugs and alcohol. Okay? So those are that's the end game for us, is to be sustainable and to understand what's going on in our community. Okay. The Strategic Prevention Framework outlines a process for an organization, that's us, for us to follow in order to prevent and reduce the use of abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. So the key word is prevent. Not to say that we can't intervene and help people, but our main focus is prevention, because that is big picture, long term, how we can affect and almost change. So there are 2 types of factors that go into this. We've got risk factors and protective factors. Wow, a lot of little clicky things that did not put in here. So there are risk factors to consider as we're working on our community and our plan for change. We're using the Strategic Prevention Framework to figure out the plan for change. There's 2 types of factors we need to consider. Risk factors. These are I remember these by, risk factors are kind of the negative things that might be going on in the community that make it easy for people to fall into a life of misuse or abuse. Things like that could be, they make people more susceptible. So some examples could be availability of alcohol. For some counties and some cities, just the amount of liquor stores in bars and places that sell alcohol without properly IDing youth, that could be a risk factor. Those kids didn't choose that, and maybe the adults didn't exactly choose that, but that is something that exists in their community that's adding kind of unnecessary risk. Not saying let's get rid of all the bars and liquor stores, but maybe getting more stringent on who we ID and how we ID type thing, just as an example. Another example of a risk factor could be community norms. So for example, I live in Clarksville, Tennessee. When I was in high school, it was a social norm that at homecoming, no matter what guidance your parents gave you, the goal was to somehow get alcohol after the homecoming dance. Now, I have loving, incredible parents. I feel so fortunate. I had an excellent upbringing. Even with all of that, all of my peers, even teachers, knew that the goal at the end of homecoming was to obtain alcohol. That was a social norm within my high school. Does that make sense? So risk factors are anything that puts I'm using youth as an example just because that's an easy one for me. Or is anything that puts the youth at an unnecessary risk that we could maybe change? We can't change the age to buy alcohol legally. We could, but we are just Canyon County. But we could change how parents and children feel about alcohol. The second type of factors to consider are protective factors. So I think of these as kind of the positive things. These are the things that exist in your community that are working in our favor. So some examples of those could be maybe people in Canyon County, maybe their families are a dual parent family, and most families are part of a church or are part of a community organization. That sort of close-knit family structure, if that is true for Canyon County, that could be a protective factor. More children than not have a loving family and a roof over their head to go home to. So those are things that we aren't necessarily going to change, but we should be aware of because they could be affecting our community. Another example of a protective factor could be maybe your middle school and high school do a very good sex education program, or maybe they do a really good alcohol and Juul and all the nasty stuff type training for students. Maybe. I know, again, for my county that's not true, but in some counties they have that program and it does affect students, and that would be a protective factor. So, a few reasons why we like to use the spiff. Okay, now bear with me now. I didn't make this PowerPoint. All this clicking is not my style. A few reasons why we like to use the spiff and why the Center for Substance Abuse Research chooses and encourages this is because every step is data-driven. We don't make a decision because we have an opinion about it. We figure out what's going on in our community, and we make a decision because we have cold, hard facts and numbers that back up that opinion. This one's easy. It gets things done. It is a process, so 3 years from now we can be like, what are we doing? We're just having meetings where we sit and stare at each other and the Army lady talks at us. Are we getting anything done? That is when you look at the spiff and you say, okay, maybe we're in the implementation phase, or maybe we're building capacity, or maybe we just are accidentally sitting in here and staring at each other. If that's the case, let's take a step back and revisit the spiff. It gives us direction. The other thing that's awesome about the spiff is there's no age barrier. It's not just a model that only kids can understand or only adults can understand. It's not just for church people or not church people, just for old people or just for young people. It's simple, it makes sense, anybody can use it, and if we use the model appropriately, anybody can feel the effects of the model working. Some disadvantages, limited resources. So as we move into this model, everything we have is right here in this room. The Strategic Prevention Framework works without money. It does not work without time. So limited resources, you have to really stick to it. Like when you make a plan, you have to follow it through to get back to the evaluation phase or it's not going to work. And this one's pretty big and worth mentioning, the administrative load. So what that means is the board, specifically Glenn and Pam, can't do the Strategic Prevention Framework model by themselves. Even if they spent every waking hour, 2 people looking at the chart unfortunately aren't going to be able to get it done. Not to doubt either one of you. I mean, I have seen you both work miracles. So this, if there's one thing to take away from this, and we are going to get to the model, we're almost there. The potential stakeholders. So stakeholders meaning who can benefit or gain from this coalition. And I think this is probably the most critical point of this presentation for where your coalition is at now. Before we dive all the way into the spiff model, we need people in the room and at the table that take a certain stake in it. So there is space at the table for everyone, literally and figuratively. I mean, we need everyone to be on board to make the community a better place. But who can we get in the room that they have something to gain by showing up here, or they have something to lose by not being involved in this work that we're doing? And that can come off kind of harsh, I don't want it to. Here's an example of someone in my community in Montgomery County who might take stake in my coalition that I hadn't thought of up until I actually asked them. We have a huge car dealership It's right next to a high school. The car dealership, it's Jenkins and Y and Jenkins. Jenkins and something. It's huge. There's all kinds of brand new cars. It's right next to Northeast High School. High school students are awesome. However, when high school students don't have anything to do after school, they walk through that parking lot and they trash the place. They throw rocks through the windows, even just innocent things like walking through the parking lot. Like, teenagers are not evil, awful people. But when they get out of school, if they aren't invested in a program, they're bored just like anybody, and they walk through that big giant parking lot, accidents happen. And crime can happen because there's no oversight there. Do I think that Mr. Jenkins wants to sit in a coalition meeting once a month? Absolutely not. But when I say, hey Mr. Jenkins, we have an idea, the coalition has an idea. What if you let us put on this initiative, X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, maybe it's a booth at the school, maybe it is a youth chapter of this very coalition that kids can get involved in after school. Maybe that will be one less kid going through the parking lot throwing rocks in the windows of the BMWs. And that's kind of an extreme example, but I think when you bring people to the table who have something to lose or to gain, they are more apt to participate with their voice, their time, their energy, and their money. So, kind of just be thinking in the back of your head, who in Cannon County can we bring to the table that might have something to gain or lose? Parents have something to gain or lose. We all have something to gain or lose. But who can take such a stake that they might have a voice and some moving and shaking ability in this community to really get something started? Here's some more examples. And I will say, when I first came on to this coalition to help, I was so impressed by how many key leaders, Glenn and I and Pam sat down, and I don't remember if it was me or someone else had given him a coalition one-on-one kind of workbook. It's essentially a packet of papers that we give to someone when they're like, oh, I want to have a coalition in my community. And we're like, great idea. Here's a packet of papers that's not small. I want you to look this over and see if you're ready. Excuse me, do you have people that are interested? I come back and they're like, okay, well here's the packet. We filled in every line, every single person we know. Here's how they can help, where they work. It blew my mind. I had never seen a county or someone take such an interest in a coalition. And like, I was anticipating having to be like, okay, you need someone from the school. You need a parent. You need, having to really walk through the sectors. And he was like, I have all the sectors, so what do we do now? And that speaks a lot of the initiative of your community. So I guess that's a compliment. I was so impressed. And even now, there's new faces at the table and more people every time. So thank you. And it takes a minute to get something like this going because we have to learn how to do it. But you're in such a better spot than so many counties across the state. And that's like coming from experience. You guys are on a honeypot of like adults and young adults who really care about the wellness of your community. So, thank you. And thank you too for doing all that work on the front end. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now we're going to actually talk about the model. Enough about here's how great the model is. Here's how it works. If you'll look on that front page, you'll see that spinning wheel, all those colors. And the first, we're going to call it phase one. Phase one is the assessment. This can happen the next meeting, it could happen a year from now, it could happen once a year, every year till the end of time. The assessment happens whenever it's necessary. And what happens is, I call it a community assessment. It looks like we host a big event. Usually there's some sort of delicious food, that's what I prefer. And me and one of my team members facilitate a working group where we really dive into every aspect of the community that you all know to be true. My partner who's been with me out here in Cannon County, Will, none of us live in Cannon County. I live in Montgomery, he lives in Rutherford. We don't know anything about, like, when I think what is Cannon County, the only thing I have is the faces in this room. And although that is a great representation of Cannon County, I think I probably have the cream of the crop in this room. I don't necessarily think that this is the community as a whole. I don't necessarily know that we have a representative from every socioeconomic class in the room. So for a community assessment, we would gather all the people everyone who might know something about Cannon County. We would have probably like a 1.5 to 2 hour working meeting. It would look less like Sadie talking to you all about a PowerPoint. It looks more like working groups. We put some questions on big, huge pieces of paper. We split them into groups, and you work on answering those questions. There are questions like, what are the demographics of our county? How do people get rich? How do people stay poor? What substances do we know people are using? How are they getting them? It is almost like, for lack of a better term, community members get to kind of just word vomit out everything they know about the county. Will and I take it back to our office. We pair up with our intelligence analysts, which is just people in an office with fancy computers who have access to all the data across the state. And we say, like, this is what they're saying about the community. How can we prove that in data? Is this an opinion or is this true? I'll be honest with you, it's usually true. I don't think people just put things down because they're scared. Usually what you put down is true. So then we take all that data and we figure out the next step. That will be our community assessment. We're going to figure out how ready we are. What do we have? What do we need? And we'll develop, it says one clear problem statement. We usually come up with like 1 to 3 and then come back to the coalition and say, here are the 3 problems we hashed out from that community assessment. Which one of these 3 do you guys want to start working on now? We pick a problem. It could be something small. It usually, the best thing is if you pick something small that you actually have influence on. Let's stop teenage pregnancy in Cannon County. Probably not the best one to pick. I wouldn't say that all of us in the room can affect that immediately. Something we could do is, maybe teenagers don't know the risks of Juul cigarettes, and that's something we can help with. So you'll figure out a problem that you think is worth tackling and that you have the resources to get started with, and then we'll get started. The next phase, and again, these can be out of order. So for Cannon County specifically, we had already built some capacity way before the community assessment. We are still in the capacity building phase. We are gathering the people who want to make a difference. The way that you all can help us build capacity, because we're already knee-deep in the capacity building, is to share with the other people in your community what this coalition intends to do and why it is important. They don't have to have an answer. They don't even have to volunteer for something. But to just get people in the room and bring an awareness to the problem makes all the difference. It really sets us up for success. So when we do have a plan of how we're going to tackle a problem, we have people in the room that are like, I've been listening to this, and here's how I might be able to help. The third phase is where we develop a plan. So ultimately, we would do the community assessment, then we'd gather a bunch of people, and we'd have something like a town hall, where it would be an open invite. Anybody and everybody can come to this location. It's going to be awesome. And we as a coalition are going to explain to the whole community exactly what we want to do. And then we'll be like, who thinks they can help. And people will kind of rise to the occasion. We'll form committees. And those committees will help come up with a plan for how we're going to do it. Maybe you decide that the first thing you want to do is get out a simple information magnet that says what the Tennessee Red Line number is. That's not the right thing. Lifeline.
Red line.
It is Red Line. Thank you. Maybe you decide that. Maybe you're like, all we want to do is make sure every household in this county has a Red Line magnet. And so you would need a subcommittee. It's not so easy as Pam goes down to Kroger, she tells somebody she wants it, and they fill her basket, right? There's a million steps that go into making something. So a committee would rise to the occasion, and they would be like, we're going to tackle that. Here's what we think we need. Who in this room can help with it? Us as a planning committee are going to actually make the plan, and you as a coalition are going to do the thing. So the planning committee is going to figure out how the magnets are going to be made, what they're going to say, what they're going to look like, and what our plan for distribution is. And then the planning committee would come to the coalition and say, okay, we have the magnets, we have a plan for distribution, now it's your time. All of you, come get 10 magnets. When you leave here, give those magnets out. Something that simple. Sounds simple, it takes some work, but that is just an example of how a subcommittee might bring a plan to life. We're all kinds of effort and get their support. Okay. Phase 4 would be the implementation. This is when, plan and who's gonna help get them out. That's small scale. In the grand scheme of things, your board and your epidemiology group would be coming up with what is the large end goal for this coalition? What do we really want to do, which is create awareness around prevention in Cannon County.